Welcome to 20 Minutes of Clarity, your go-to podcast for financial insight and advice.
I'm your host, Jason Noble, and with me today is Andy, the man merchant. As we wrap up our series around fear, we're going to be talking about the fear of retirement. So, why are you so afraid to retire? Is the questions that we're going to be addressing. There's many different reasons why people have fear about transitioning to that next step of Life 2.0 of retirement. And so, we're going to boil that down today in today's episode. And so, Andy, before we got started, you were sharing with me a story about a client that has plenty of funds to be able to
Mhm.
retire, but they still have that concern. Do you mind starting this podcast off with just a story about a recent conversation that you had?
Yeah, and I'm so glad we're done with the fear theme. These last 4 weeks have been hard because both of us are so much we involve around the positive and optimism, and to talk about fear took us out of our comfort zone, but it was so relevant. So I'm glad that this is our last one. But I also think this one resonates to everybody, like you were talking about. Kicking us off. Obviously we work with, and I've worked with a number of clients on helping them achieve that date of retirement, which I think will probably define really what retirement is. But, I had a couple clients that were so excited. They're like, hey, Jason, or Andy, and let's go. I'm ready to retire. My day's done. We've done all this planning. We've worked ahead of time. We have secure income in place. They're like, hey, we're going to start doing some things and going there. Well, now they realize their dreams. They're a couple years into retirement, and I cannot tell you how many times when we talk, no matter how many reports I show, every single day they want to do something, massive, not just everyday stuff. They fear it, right? I want to be able to buy a new car, and they fear having to buy the new car. Oh, I want to be able to take a trip with friends and family, like which they brought up, and they're like, do we have enough money to do it? So it's like, did we achieve financial freedom if all we did was transfer the fear that we had to decisions? And I mean, I've put out as much data as I can to give them that peace of mind, but the mindset that needs to be rewired in them, which you'll hear that theme a little bit later, just hasn't set in. So I'm just out there, and I was just thinking as we were talking earlier, how many other people out there today that are listening or viewing our podcast or haven't yet, that are like, man, I'm retired, but I still have all these fears, and that I maybe some new fears I didn't have when I was working, just because of the mindset. So I just thought it was important that we talk about this as we wrap up fear, and that's my quick kickoff.
And I have stories very similar to yours where I could even show them, okay, you could spend an extra $30,000 a year and still not run out of money. And it gives them a peace of mind for a moment until that next thing that comes up and it's $38,000 and they're like, can we do it? It's like, well, okay, maybe next year you don't do 38 or you don't do 30, maybe you lower that down, but yes, you can still do it, and it's also having conversations around what does that plan look like? There's very few situations that arise in life where unexpected expense comes up of that magnitude. Okay. And it's going like, okay, if you wanted to go on this trip, what does that look like? Very rarely do friends call my retired clients up and saying, hey, we're going to France next week. Do you want to roll with us? Right? It's usually we're looking at doing
Right.
it at this month and this year and whatever the case may be. And I just ask my clients to let us know that they're really interested in doing this so that we could come up with a distribution plan to get that money out to them and spread out that risk versus what if we wanted to send it out to them of March of 2020, right, when the market's crashing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could reverse dollar cost average that money out to them so we could spread out that risk, or even tax implications if we do it over a couple year period of time, spreading it out at the end of the year going into the next year. So these are the things that I like to have conversations on with my clients. And I find it that when I start to show them that we have a plan for it and we have a conversation around it, it subsidizes those concerns, but it doesn't mean that it just offsets it all together. It could creep back in, And so when I'm looking at that, is it a fear of running out of money? Is it a fear of outliving their money, right? Is there something that we didn't address in another part of their financial plan that we need to give them that self-assurance? And when you go back to the drawing board and you go back to the clear picture analysis, it's like, no, we did cover all those different aspects. It was just how do they receive that information and then start using it beyond just making a better informed financial decision, but how are they navigating that between their ears? How are
Yes.
they receiving this information so they can make better informed emotional decisions as well? And I want to talk about this other aspect of it. It's around the fear of I have a job, I have a place to go, I have a vocation, I also have quote unquote a purpose. And then I go into not receiving a paycheck. All of a sudden, I'm relying on my portfolio for that paycheck. And I don't have that vocation, i.e., I don't have that purpose anymore. Now I have another purpose, and I'm trying to find out what that purpose could be. Some people slide into retirement and they have a strong purpose and they're able to navigate right into the new purpose really nicely. And others have a hard time with that discernment and that decision of where do they really want to allocate their new defined purpose towards. I could share stories about this, but I want to hear how have you been able to have conversations with your clients on this topic of that life 2.0? What does that look like in
Yeah.
transition?
Yeah, no, I just was listening to you talk, and I think those that are listening and viewing, I think how I have the conversation, and I know you're going to have some great stories to share because I think this is a storytelling podcast. This one's about letting people know that other people are in the same question. But there's really, let's start with this, Jason. There's really five kind of key points. You hit a couple of them there that people fear retirement. You know, the one is that we talked about, and this is the conversation I have, is it's financial concerns, right? The Clear Picture Wealth Program is designed to take that worry out of it. You know, now we buy into it, but we're still got to get clients to buy into it. Sometimes it just takes some time, right? They may or may not understand when we're talking about portfolio reliance and sustainable withdrawal rates and all those wonderful industry jargons and topics that we get to like nerd out on. They don't quite understand it. They just want to have a positive. So in the Clear Picture Wealth Program, we start with that. We just say, here's your outlook of retirement probability. Your success is this. Here's the other categories, and here's your scoring. It should give them a little bit of a peace of mind. So that's step one. We just addressed that, right? The other four concerns that people have, which is loss of purpose, right? That's a mindset thing. That's a thing that we just got to be there for them, right? The health issues, you know, working with clients, and I know, Jason, you shared on past podcasts and past conversations we had here is that just being there for your client if they have a health event, you know, and how that changes things. And we'll touch on that a little bit. And the last two is just the change around uncertainty. You know, there's going to be life changes that are major. There's going to be things that you're going to accomplish. There's things that we haven't planned for that are going to occur. Some fun, some not fun. It's just having that. And you know what? And probably more for guys like, you know, you and I, it's really resonant. Is social isolations. I mean, if I had to sit there and say I'm going to retire by the definition, which I still think nobody understands what that definition probably really is. So what? Retirement is defined by me not working in the workplace anymore. Okay. But that social isolation, not having those friend networks and maybe starting to fear the second half of life. So there's just these fears about uncertainty that we can't control. There's fears around that can't help isolation. So answering your question, it's letting my clients know, hey, that I'm here for you during these points, right? That's that. But helping them, more importantly, work through the mindset change and the mindset shift of that. And I do want to cover that here in a bit, but I want to hear your stories first and what you want to add to that information.
Well, on the mindset part of it, I like to start having more of the mindset conversations about 3 to 5 years before their actual retirement date. And understanding 3 to 5 could sound like it's getting too early of a start on that kind of conversation. It's just, I've had clients get all of a sudden involuntary layoff at work. And and then they can't find another job because you know their experience is desired, but what they're looking for as far as income is too much from what the new employer wants to pay. You know, all those different things that come in and they're kind of like forced into retirement. And then if I didn't have those conversations 3 to 5 years earlier, it's a shock to the system in a lot of cases. It could create
Well,
depression and some other just awful emotions that could creep up with that.
Well, right, Jason,
However,
that's hard. That's hard with our industry because our
yeah,
industry generally is saying we'll help you as a financial expert once we have wealth to manage, and then we'll help you with decisions. Right? We have to flip that, and that's why I'm glad you bring that to the forefront because people that are listening and viewing right now, you need to understand if you're not working with a financial advisor today or yet because the path to get there has been closed because you haven't retired, you don't have that unlocked wealth to manage. That's when you go to clearpicturefinancial.com. That's when you find one of our teams because we're here to give you that 3 to 5 year advice, 10-year advice. Like, heck, we'll start as early as you want to because our program's built on advice centric planning. And then we'll let the wealth decide. So, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, Jason. I just felt like that was a
no,
really good highlight of what the program can do as
you
far
could
as
cut me
advice.
off anytime, Andy, the man merchant. Okay, have that confidence.
Hey, when
And
you give me the
don't
floor,
be afraid to cut me off. There's no fear here. We're just talking about retirement fear, not cutoff fear. But like so what do the conversations really sound like? This is where you do what Andy just suggested. You reach out to us so that you can start that conversation, not just hearing about it on a podcast, but actually experience it yourself. But it's going into, okay, I'm going to put a stress test into the analysis that you're not retiring in 5 years. You're retiring in 2 years because of a forced retirement. What would that look like? What would you do? Walk me through what you would think about doing at that point. And this is where it starts to get interesting. The answers are very different from every single time I've asked that question. I've heard people go, I love working with plants. I'll go work and just, at a nursery and sell plants. And I'm like, okay, that sounds wonderful. Are you okay with picking up plants and like moving them around and loading them up into the car? Oh, I won't do that. Someone else will do that there. Oh, okay, okay. But you could then be okay with talking about what works well in the shade and in the sun and the South Carolina soil, whatever, right? You can't grow peonies here. And if you live in South Carolina, you could figure out how to grow peonies in the low country, let me know. My wife would love this advice. But what I'm getting at is like you have to know all these different things. But like if that's her passion, in this particular situation, it was her passion, she was able to then, she did get at a company that she worked at involuntary layoff. It wasn't like I designed it. It was just that we had the conversation. And as soon as she got it, she was like, I'm ready to move out of this and I'm ready to move into this now. And she was able to transition very smoothly. If we didn't have that conversation, could she have still found her way to working at the nursery? By all means. But it wasn't like it was part of the overall design, what if, plan B, scenario to then make a better informed emotional and financial decision to jump into that. Now, in this particular situation, she didn't need to go and work. She wanted to. Her finances dictated she could retire and not have to go back to work. But she still wanted to have that purpose working within her passion. I have another client that's down the street from me as we're having this conversation at Charleston National. He works there 3 days a week. He's in the pro shop, and he loves it. He gets 15% off of the fee of green fees, and like he absolutely loves just having that couple days a week. Until I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I got some extra tickets to go to the River Dogs game." He goes, "I can't do it. We have like this tournament going on Friday afternoon. I gotta be at," right? So there is some of those sacrifices that he now has to make. But think about this. These are conversations that I had with both of these scenarios years before they transitioned into retirement, which then gave them the confidence to be able to transition into retirement. The thing I want everyone to ask themselves right now is like, what is that purpose going to be once you retire from your day job? What is that going to be? Is it going to be just serving in your household? Being there for not only your children but also grandchildren, right? Is it going to be that? Is it going to be making sure that you're able to do maintenance on the home? Right? When Andy and I are working, if I wanted to paint this room again, a different color, I have to do that in one weekend. But if you're retired, okay, listen here, I'm giving you advice from other retirees. That should take 3 to 4 days. One day just to tape, okay? The next day just to do the primer. The day after that to do the base coat, right? That should be a few day project, right? Because you got the time. But Andy and I doing that? No, it has to be in one afternoon. We got to do it all at that because we don't have the time. You do as a retiree, so enjoy that time. As
But do
as
you
we
want
talk
that
about the
time?
fear, do you want the time? I mean, so like I got this from my father-in-law. I got this from my other clients. They have the time to do it, and they're like, you know what? Why am I rushing? We just get so caught up while we're raising families, as we're growing in our careers, as we have so many obligations to so many different people that we neglect our own like value of time. It's what happens to so many people. And then boom, now they're retired and they're going, okay, I got this commodity that I never really got to leverage for myself yet, which is time. How do I then do it? And that could be scary. It could be very scary when you then have to have the time to think about what you want to do with your life when you get older, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm talking to my clients that are in their 60s and I'm like, what do you want to do when you get older, right? And those answers are very different from a lot of people, but there's some people they can't answer that question at first. They're so tied up into, well, I was a mother, or I was a father, or I was a mechanic, I was an engineer, X, Y, or Z. I was a business owner and I spent 80, 90 hours a week on my business. And now my business is being transitioned and sold. And I'm going, what's my new baby going to be? And they're freaking out. They're like just crawling out the shirts, like, okay, what am I going to do here? Right. And they have the financial means, but did they have a conversation with a qualified professional to talk about the next life 2.0? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I love that. And that's the thing. I think that's the biggest call to action now. If you're answering that question, if you have that question, if you're trying to seek that question, and I'm not saying you're retired, then great. Like maybe you're struggling. I'm going to give you we're going to give you a tip. We're going to post it on the clearpicturefinancial.com website and one of our white papers. But even if you're thinking well in advance, Jason and I, are examples of where we're still in the accumulation phase. We're not retiring tomorrow. But we're going through this activity. I can promise you that. But here it is. There's seven steps to rewire as you prepare, right? Step number one, and we'll go through these real quickly as we approach the end, is assess your interests and skills. You should always be saying, okay, what is it that I would want to do if I retire, either by choice or not by choice? If there's something new and I have the financial means, then what is it that I would like to do? And I have to understand where I am. I can tell you right now, you can learn a new hobby, but if you're not a golfer and then you're retired and you're expecting to go join the weekend group or the weekday group, you need to find the right group to play with, right? Because there's a lot of different skills. So assess your skills and understand that. The second one is set clear goals. And I've even added more to it, expectations. Like Jason, you mentioned, you may love to do a specific hobby, but if you don't want to do all the other side work that goes along with that expectation, then it may not be really providing that financial freedom that you're seeking. So set clear goals and understand clear expectations of those. The third one we all know is financial planning. Having that clear picture wealth program, having that clear picture analysis to understand and give you that financial peace of mind is essential. It's just the baseline, the foundation. So we all hear it, we know it, have it, be able to react to it, have that financial partner. Number four is if you don't have the skills, acquire new skills. This is a great time where all that extra time that Jason was alluding to, you asked me to paint the house, but my wife would be like, hey, you know what? I'd rather you not. So she goes, I know how you do things. But if I got the time to go maybe learn how to hone in that skill and be better, I could be like, hey, look, honey, look what I can do now. Right. So take the time. That's where the time can come in, is being able to invest in perfecting something that maybe you weren't able to do while you were busy and working. So acquire new skills needs to understand that. Build a support network. I think it's so important, right? I mean, I always think about McDonald's and all the guys and gals that meet up for their coffee in the morning. I did it with my grandpa when he was young. He had a support network, right? They all just kind of share note, but they're there, right? They may be able to take trips on you, keep you relevant, keep you having a purpose. Maybe you like to do planning and you could be that planner within the group. who wants to organize all the trips when you go on your big group. But if you don't have a support network, then you're gonna probably end up burdening your family. I needed to be very clear. Burdening your family, with things, and not that that's a bad thing, but it's there. The last two is test the waters. If travel is what you want to do, then why don't you travel to like closer locations versus further? If you're wanting to move and get a beach house, rent it versus
like rent one out.
Yeah. And then the last one is, you know what? Stay flexible. What you set out to do in year 1, 2, or 3, it may not work. So shift. Don't be hard set on anything, just like anything out there. So like I said, those are our 7 quick tips on how to kind of rewire as you journey. And don't do this if you're already retired. Don't do this if you're retiring tomorrow, or I should say, don't just do this if you're retiring tomorrow or if you are retired. Start this early. Have these conversations now. Talk to your significant other, because they're the ones that are going to be journeying this with you. So go to clearpicturefinancial.com if you want that summary. I know I covered them quickly with some high levels, but we're going to have a white paper that you can scroll down and download it amongst a lot of other content. So sorry, Jason, I had to clear that up. I'm apologizing. I'm fearful of your feedback, but I know it's going to be great. But yeah, today's topic was big. So let's close this out.
We'll go ahead and wrap up with going into, Andy just explained the 7 steps that you could take so that you could lessen that concern and that fear of going into retirement. That's such an important thing. And I want you to definitely take that action. Go to the white paper on our website, clearpicturefinancial.com, download it so then you could go ahead and check off the boxes. If you're interested in working with a qualified professional showing you how to go about those steps, how do you execute and implement the strategies that we discussed, that's where we want you to schedule a meeting with one of our specialists. That was Andy, the man merchant. My name is Jason Noble. I think you call me what now?
Dropping knowledge.
Dropping knowledge, Noble. Okay, I'll take it. You just 20 minutes of clarity on Clear Picture Financial. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you. And until next time, don't be afraid. Be thankful.